and welcome back to the channel. My name is Katie, and guys, I just want to warn you, this is going to be a little bit of a longer video, but make sure and watch to the end because I think this is going to be a really good one and it's got some good stuff in it. So you saw the title of my video. Before anybody is upset with me, please understand, I am not pro Johnny Depp. I am not pro Amber Heard. What I am is somebody who likes to equally weigh information and try to come to as much wisdom and truth as we can of a situation. Now, with that being said, by everything I've seen, it looks like Johnny Depp is a huge, massive victim to Amber. However, you guys know on this channel, I've talked a lot about A word. A word means physically, mentally, emotionally, intimately not nice to somebody. It's YouTube, please infer. A-worders and A-word behavior. And as a result, as I've said on repeat, A-word stuff is not black and white, unfortunately, especially when you end up getting into reactive A-word. And there's been a lot of question and speculation on who was actually the A-worder in this situation. Now, from everything we've seen in this trial and everything that's come out, to me and my perception, it very much looks like Johnny is more of the victim. However, somebody just came out, her name is Leeja Miller, and I believe she is an attorney or she's a lawyer. She's somewhere in the law field. And she put out a video that I really like. Now, with that being said, it seems like she's kind of where I'm at, where she's trying not to be pro this or pro that, right? But she's talking about the perception of Amber Heard and defending a little bit about what's going on. I like a lot of her points. I disagree with several of her points. And I want you guys to understand this is not an attack video. This is not a call out. This is commentary, right? But I wanted to respond to some of what she said because even though I agree with some of it, I also think there's key pieces of information missing, but she makes a lot of good points, a lot of them. So you know what, even though this girl doesn't need my help, go check her out. Like, it's all love here, right? That's what I want to say. There's no negativity in what I'm doing. This is all love. And I really do think she has some really great points. So I'm going to pull this up here. Let's see. Hold on. I'm doing a mic check because you guys know my situation with my little computer. Okay, let's see. Let me get this here and we're going to watch. Okay. Let me just make sure. Are we good? Are we good, computer? Yes. We're going to watch this together. This is from her YouTube channel, and Leeja, L-E-E-J-A Miller. So L-E-E-J-A. Leeja, I hope I'm saying that right. Again, like, I'm always trying to be nice and polite. And, like, one of my fears is I'm so scared I'm accidentally going to be hurtful in some way. Like, one of my biggest fears is accidentally hurting somebody's feelings. And it's hard with me because I'm such an outgoing person. I have such a big mouth that's even if the intention is felt, sometimes that can happen. Not often, because most of the time people will feel my intention. So they can feel, oh, she means no harm. But still, I'm trying. So let's go ahead and let's get into this.
Okay, let's do this. I've been trying to unpack why this Depp v. Heard lawsuit, and more so the hysterical public response to it has been so upsetting to me. Usually I'm really good at emotionally removing myself from legal situations. It's literally my job, but with this one I get upset and I get fucking pissed about random things that I see online about it. Because it's everywhere, even if you're trying to avoid it. And I realize that it's probably because I'm feeling incredibly triggered and re-traumatized as someone who's experienced relationship abuse in the past.
And she just answered her question about why everybody's so fascinated, right? It's because, well, I think there are two reasons. Two. Why did I do it that way? Two. Like I'm Nixon, right? We're peace. Okay, number one, in this situation, yes, to many of us, both men and women, everyone, to anybody who's gone through any type of A-word behavior, whether it's in a relationship, like a intimate relationship, or whether you grew up in it, this triggers all of that for so many of us. And the second thing is, I think as well, this triggers both sides of the Me Too debate, both of them. I also think as a society, I think that we're really tired of seeing people's lives get ruined just over accusations and no evidence. But with that being said, when it comes to A-word behavior, many times you're not going to have evidence. So what do you do? And that's why I always talk about it's such a gray area, and both sides are right. And both sides have good points. We're all just conditioned to believe you have to believe one side's narrative over the others. And this is what I like to do. I like to challenge both narratives, or whatever narratives we're being force-fed and presented. I like to challenge them all so we can get more wisdom and information. But I thought I just pointed out where she's like the hysteria around this and why. And she's basically saying it. It's because we feel triggered. We feel triggered as a society because, in my opinion, part of what's going on with Me Too and why it's failing is there's not a lot of room for forgiveness. If there's no room for forgiveness, there's no incentive for anybody to change, and then it's just all bullying, fear-based. So then the victims become the bullies. But as said consistently, be careful you don't become the people you're trying to fight against. Weird stuff. Let's keep going.
But I'm not feeling triggered on behalf of Johnny Depp. Though I have repeatedly and publicly acknowledged that I am not taking any sides, men can and are absolutely victims of relationship abuse, and based on the little bit of testimony I've been exposed to in this court case, it sounds like Heard did allegedly do some pretty malicious shit during the course of their relationship. I'm not denying that. But I am feeling some kind of way about the way that Heard is being inhumanely attacked every day on a global scale. So let me break down why this is upsetting for me and what it means going forward for victims of relationship abuse and related defamation lawsuits. When an abuse accusation is brought up, people generally expect the abused person to be the perfect victim. What is a perfect victim? Someone who didn't do anything wrong on their side ever. We have this like romanticized view of the battered woman whose trauma response, if we think of the like fight, flight, or freeze framework, her trauma response was freeze. She was abused, but she did nothing wrong herself. She didn't fight back. She was a devoted partner, and he was a monster. She's the victim, he's the abuser. It's clean, it's black and white. It's a dichotomy that allows our little reptilian brains to tie up a conflict with a nice little bow, pick sides, and then consider ourselves righteous for having picked the correct side. Unfortunately, if you've ever been the survivor of relationship abuse or worked with survivors, both of which I have done, you know that that's simply not how human relationships work. It's messy. It's complicated. Often both sides are traumatized for whatever reason and in need of help and empathy and emotional support. And sometimes when you're being abused, you fight back in ways that aren't okay.
I was applauding when I heard her saying these things, because this is the stuff, guys, when I do these videos, at the end of the day, I don't really care about Johnny Depp and Amber Heard. I'm not a fan of either one of them. I don't hate them, but that's the thing. In general, I am not, what is the word fan? Fan is derivative from fanatic, just like celebrity. Celeb. Celebrated. People we celebrate, right? I'm a Gemini, so I get right into the meaning of stuff. I gotta tell you, for people who aren't literal or people who like to speak in buzzwords or buzz phrases or riddles, drives me insane because I'm a Gemini and I'm like, you can't do that with me. I see to the core of stuff, right? But this is the stuff that I try to impart to you guys. And when I talk about this stuff, I want to talk about the nuances and the complexities because it is. And yes, that's the other thing. We think of, we do have this romanticized view when it comes to the woman who's being A-worded, right? And we do this thing where we put victims, especially when they're women, and we look at them in a box of they need to be perfect. That doesn't exist. It doesn't. People, and we blame them for everything. Well, why'd you stay so long, right? Why didn't you run? I mean, there's so many different elements. First of all, A-word behavior sometimes, most of the time, guys, you don't meet the guy. Like, let's say you meet in a bar. He's not punching you in the face immediately. Many times, there's a lead up to it. There's a lead up of getting you comfortable. This person, many times, how do they hook you? Love bomb you. Love bomb you. This is part of how people will hook you. And then as they do that and they try to progress the relationship, which they'll push for that to be quick, suddenly you're entrenched with this person. They're all into your finances. They have control over everything. Suddenly you want to just get out and run. It's just you and your shoes. What if you have children? What if you have chronic health issues? What if your babies do? Guys, it's not black. My point is to say none of this is black and white as well. Something we don't talk about, reactive A-word. This is where the person who's being A-worded sometimes fights back. And this is where, and I wanted to talk about this, you will end up doing things in that also aren't okay. Then you can become an A-worder yourself in that process. So it's interesting to me when people say, well, they A-worded each other. Correct. The question is, who started it and how? Who's doing which type of A-word? And in this case, this is why I am so big on when it comes to this stuff. So many people get stuck into the narrative of victimhood. Now, in saying that, yes, there are victims. I've been victim of this on repeat, right? And many of us have, especially if you grow up in it, your brain wires that this is what love is and you attract it in, right? So my point is to say this stuff is so complex, and this is why, to me, the biggest point that I try to embed in people about this stuff is not only education, but how do we fix it? And you know what it starts with, at least for me, this is my healing journey, forgiveness. Forgiving myself and forgiving that person. This is what the Me Too movement lacks, and in my opinion, this is why it fails, and this is why we're having a cultural backlash, and Amber in that is the target. However, in saying that, she's also made herself a target by all of her awful behaviors, but I agree with her. Why were Amber's behaviors so awful? Has she always been awful? Or is this a situation, by the way, I'm speculating, where Johnny, having addiction issues that he's admitted, when he was an addict, had horrible A-word behavior, and sometimes she fought back. But then again, sounds like she was an addict too. 2 addicts. So it's a very complicated topic and situation, considering you have 2 people with lots of money with constant access to any pharmaceuticals or any, type of thing like that they shouldn't have, that they end up having. So let's keep going.
This has been so triggering for me because I was that woman. I probably shouldn't get this vulnerable and mean, but here we are. My experience with abuse was never physical, which frankly adds to the complication, but emotional abuse and sexual manipulation often accompany physical abuse, making every situation of relationship abuse a deeply complicated and personal ordeal. I personally spent 1.5 years with a man who would mock me when I got emotional, laugh in my face when I cried, give me the silent treatment when I did or said something that he didn't like, try to control how I spent my own money, and he called me boring or a prude or told me I had a sex problem anytime I denied him sex, which was most of the time because he was horrible to me and my body shut down long before my brain knew what was going on.
I want to point this out. I had an A-word relationship where I had I'm so glad she said this. I had similar experience in my A-word relationship, and I've told you guys this, I'm more on the spectrum of people who don't experience intimate feelings and intimacy, please, and fur. And as I've gotten older, I've wondered, there are a couple things. Is it, I think for a while, and please don't take this as that I'm saying I'm better or worse than anybody. I think I just thought maybe I'm more spiritually evolved where I don't need that. But I've also had to wonder, is it the fact that that area is completely shut down for me because of what I've been through? Because if I like somebody and I'm in a relationship with you, I have all kinds of intimate feelings, but just for that person, right? The problem is, I can't typically ever get to that point with a person because that takes trust, that takes vulnerability, and that has been I'm getting emotional. So desecrated for me amongst friendships and relationships. But you know what you do? You know what I've done to heal that? I'll tell you right now. I don't put my faith in people. I put my faith in whatever you want to call the universe, God, source, love, creator, Allah, Buddha, Krishna, whatever name you want to put for it. That is where I put my source of faith. That, for me, that higher loving power doesn't let me down when I know other people will. So at the end of the day, what's been healing me is to know, regardless of what people do to me, because of that connection, that faith I have, I am safe. I am taken care of, and nobody can take things away from me because what's meant for me will be. And with that being said, like she said as well, controlling the money. You guys don't understand. These people, especially if it's an A-worder where they know what they're doing, right? Like a sociopath or a narcissist, and they have intention with it. There's a whole plan that you can't see behind it, that unless you know this stuff, until you're deep into it, it's too late. And there are severe consequences for you and the people around you once they get that close. But many times they don't show their true colors until they are completely entrenched in you. This is why, especially for me at this point in my life, I've learned with friendships and relationships that are new to go very slow. And now I'm at the point, you have to prove yourself to me. Are you worth my time? Are you worth my energy? And I think we all need to come at things from that perspective, because there's just too many A-worders and A-holes. Let's keep going.
And we were having one of our many arguments, and I truly have no recollection of what it was about, but I was trying to explain to him why I was frustrated, and he laughed at me and wasn't hearing me, so I shoved him. That was it. I shoved him. He wasn't heard. It didn't escalate beyond that. I should not have done that. No one should do that to the person that they love, but I was feeling unheard, invisible, and desperate in my relationship. And he never let me live it down. He would say things like, I can't believe you did that to me. I never thought I would be the victim of relationship abuse. Remember when you shoved me? Good thing I didn't get hurt. All the while continuing to manipulate and belittle me on a daily basis. And I believed him. I was the bad person. I was the one with all the problems. I was the crazy one. I was unhinged. And this happened to me a full decade ago, and I have spent the better part of the last decade in therapy working through that relationship.
I want to point this out because she made some really good, really interesting points. When people are intentional A-worders, they will do this thing where they will convince you everything is your fault. And because when you end up reacting, right? Because I've been reactive. Now, not in the way where I'm hurting people, but I've been reactive in my own ways where I would yell and scream and try to get out because, you know, what was happening, or I was being choked or hit in the face. And this is another part a lot of people don't know. Many times when the A-worders are doing what they do, guys, they're very calm about it, which is infuriating. Now, in private, that can be different. They can go from very calm to swinging wild emotions and stuff, right? But because they are so calm, they're so self-controlled. And why is that? Well, number one, there's a lack of empathy and emotion, period. But number two, typically for people like this, image is king. That's why everything happens behind closed doors. And most people will tell you, I never thought that of that person. Well, because many times they're charming, they're calm, they're charming. The people who've done the worst A-word stuff to me, in fact, one of my long-term relationships where it was really bad, this guy, you'd love him if you met him. Gorgeous, incredibly sweet, be your best friend, help you out, do anything in the world for you, and is a horrible A-worder to his partners, specifically me. I mean, I can pull up other instances, it's not my business, and I'm not trying to out anybody. And that's the other thing, guys, with this stuff, then if you react, they go, see, you're yelling, see, you're upset. See, look, you're the one who can't calm down. You're hysterical. You have the mental health problem. And guys, when this stuff happens and you get gaslit like that, it gets so difficult to know what is going on. And you recognize that you're reacting, but you don't understand what's happening. And because you're under so much trauma, at some point you break. And this is what they want. And you submit. You submit to their will. You submit to what's going on. And I can already hear, I've heard so many men go, well, don't submit, you just run away. And it's like, and I know men go through this too, I'm not saying they don't, but it is different when you're a woman because typically men can physically overpower women. And so there's a whole, and then if there's children involved, there's a whole nother layer when it's women. Not saying it's not bad with men. We should recognize male victims too. But I'm just saying she pointed out some very, very good things, and that's where it gets frustrating because this is what can happen. What can happen is somebody's doing A-word behavior, they get somebody to finally react, and then they're filming them, just like Amber did to Johnny, right? We've seen that. So interesting stuff. I think she made some good points. And also to I think her name's Leeja, I hope I'm saying that right. And I'm sure she's never going to see this, right? She's a much bigger creator, and she's successful and more power to her. But from one I hate saying survivor, I survived. I mean, I did, but I guess from somebody, you know what, just from one human being to another, girl, like I'm getting emotional. I'm really sorry that you went through that. I'm really, really sorry. And I'm glad you're recovering, and I'm glad you're getting better. And I love that you're sharing your story. So thank you for sharing it. I think it's really, what is it? Stunning. Well, I was gonna say brave, but then you always see the meme of like stunning and brave. But it is, I think it's really, really brave. And like she said, that was 10 years ago, and she spent 10 years in therapy. Guys, I've been through A-word behavior for I'm 38. I've been through it my whole life on some level. I'd say maybe it started it started probably-ish more when my parents got divorced. There was neglect before that, but more the ramping up a lot of these A-word behaviors, right? Both of them had horrible behaviors to their children as parents. So I can really relate, and at 38, I'm still on. You guys just saw a video of repressed memories that came up from literally the start of my intimate relationships when I was 15 years old, and how a traumatic experience with that impacted me. How am I 38 and I forgot that? So many things like that, guys. And that's the thing. That's why this isn't black and white. It can take so long, guys, to be able to uncover this stuff. And I've heard people talk about, oh, well, when it comes to trauma, your brain really doesn't bury stuff. No, it does, to protect you. I'm somebody who's been through it. It absolutely does. And suddenly things come up out of nowhere. I had 2 weeks. Remember I told you the former guy that I dated, the one that I really liked, but we never actually went anywhere with? Which, by the way, I think I told you guys, we did talk a few times and reconnect, and it was wonderful. He was very open to talking about this stuff and we both filled in gaps for each other. It was very, very healing. And so lots of love to that person. And you know, we don't talk much now. It's got a family and kids and completely moved on. This was a teenage thing, right? I mean, we both have, but it was a very, very healing experience. And he got to understand from his perspective, you weren't rejected. I was a teenage girl who just went through something traumatic and I didn't know what was happening. So it was just, I think it was good for both of us. But I'm sorry that she went through that, and it's hard. It can take years and years and years and years and years. It's no joke. I'm still healing. I'm still going through it. Let's keep going.
I'm now in a relationship with the most loving, caring man who makes me feel safe and heard and cared for on a level like I truly never thought possible or even that I deserved. And yet I still struggle with this. And the reason I tell you this is not to make you sympathetic to me or even to Amber Heard, but it's to illustrate how abuse works sometimes. How even if both sides act abusive towards each other, there's often a power imbalance in a relationship that allows one person to control the abuse over the other. Nothing about relationship abuse is black and white, and as outsiders, we have no idea and will never know the extent of someone else's relationship trauma. Which is why I think it's so upsetting to me to see people taking pretty universally Johnny Depp's side in this case, despite the fact that a court of law in England found Heard to be credible and found that there was substantial evidence to believe that Depp had abused her, despite the fact that recordings and text messages, evidence being used in court, show him verbally abusing her or saying horrific things to his friends about her. He's openly admitted to painting threatening messages on their walls in his own blood. Court testimony showed that he texted his friend and said he wanted to kill her and fuck her burnt corpse afterwards to make sure she's dead. And y'all are defending him?
She nailed why I have said I am not pro Johnny and I am not pro Amber. I am pro the truth. Now, I think where people come from is they did not like the lies that were uncovered in the court by Amber, and they didn't like what looked like fake crying. They didn't like how she behaved. I get it, and I'm in the same boat. With that being said, just because we did not like her performance, just because she lied, just because she's manipulative, doesn't mean that Johnny wasn't also a piece of crap. And this is why I'm not going to be pro one or pro the other. Now, what I am is I'm pro healing for everybody. I'm pro forgiveness for everybody. Now, forgiveness doesn't mean you let somebody in and let them continue to do what they do, but letting go of the hurt and letting go of the pain so we can allow healing and moving forward. That's what I want in my life, and that's what I want for everybody, and both of these people included. And I will agree that there is a lot, for instance, like Johnny apparently kicked her in the head on a plane, right? Now, again, the question, though, is going to be who had the upper hand in the A word? Who was it? Who was it that was more in control of it? I don't know. I know in terms of the court of law, things look worse for Amber. But why are we discounting all the awful things Johnny also did?
And Heard met in 2009 when Depp was 45 and Heard was 23. She'd been acting for about 5 years, and he was 25 years into his career, and one of the most acclaimed actors in the world, as well as being exceptionally wealthy. Again, I am not taking sides here, I'm just trying to even out the bias I'm seeing all around me by pointing out the very real fact that we don't know who had the upper hand in terms of the power dynamics of the relationship, but it's not like Heard came in with an advantage. And the fact is that based on what's coming out in court, as well as the court in the UK, which again found that Johnny Depp likely abused Amber Heard, both sides did awful things. And yet the court of public opinion has decided Johnny Depp is the victim here, and anyone who isn't 100% team Johnny Depp is taking the entire Me Too movement by denying that men can be victims of abuse and allowing Heard to get away with making false accusations and hurting real abuse victims everywhere. It's the buffoonery for me. It's the complete lack of nuance in the public's understanding of, I don't know, human nature, how relationships work. It's truly awe-inspiring. And this is a pattern we've seen before, especially in fandoms like Johnny Depp fandom or anti-fandoms, as some people have been calling it, where people just love to hate a certain celebrity and they use another person that celebrity apparently wronged as a validation of their unsubstantiated hatred for this person that they've never met.
This is a really interesting one. In fact, I've been through this on YouTube. Some people might even say, could even say maybe I've been a part of this to an extent. My first round of YouTube, I talked a lot about people on YouTube who did A-word behavior. Now, in my situation, I wasn't anti-fandom, I didn't hate anybody, but I was accurate in being able to spot signs of A-word behavior before other people understood what was going on. Things like, I don't know, chaining up your young audience in your basement for gratifying reasons. Some were right on the line of whether or not they were or weren't legal, please infer. A little bit different in my situation, but I've even been through this where people will ascribe something to you and they will just, okay, for instance, you know how some people just don't like you and you don't know why? It's like, I've been nice, I've been this, I've been that. And here's what I've learned about that. Sometimes it's simply because there could be a trait, there could be a tribute, there could be something about you that really has nothing to do with you, but that triggers them. So for instance, maybe there's a person that wronged them in their life and there is something about your personality or the way that you speak or your body mannerisms or different things that could come across to them as though it reminds them, it triggers them of that person, right? And they might even not be conscious of it. They may just pick up on the fact that they might look at your body language and not like it, and therefore they don't like you. But most people, again, they're not even conscious of that. They just, I don't like them. Because most people don't do that work. They don't do self-reflective awareness on themselves whatsoever. But I did think she brings up some really valid points. Because like in my case, this is what I would hear from people. Like this was a classic one. Well, because in my case, a long time ago, my first round on YouTube, I talked about my health journey quite a bit. And it was because my goal was, I said, I'm either going to fix my health or not be here. And we don't know what's wrong and how many people go through this in the United States. So let me talk about my health journey. And maybe as I uncover things that I'm finding for my health and my life, it'll help other people. It ended up, that was my intention with it, right? It ended up turning into a lot of people deciding to criticize, and they decided that I'm not actually sick, that I'm not disabled, that I am lying, and here are all the reasons, because what's going on in my body doesn't make any sense, and all these doctors kept saying nothing's wrong with you, you're anxious. Now we know I have a heart condition, I have a nervous system condition, I have a gut condition, I have a histamine condition, which ends up having to do with the immune system and the gut. I have all of these things that just took decades to get diagnosed. But what I would hear from people, because I would talk to some of these people, I would try to engage them, these people that hated me, and I am the world's worst person, and they accused me of everything. And at the end of the day, there'd be no evidence for these accusations. So I'd hear things like this. Well, you have traits of a scam artist. Okay. You're really, bubbly, and you're outgoing, and what was it? And you're charismatic. And at some point, you're going to hurt people. And that would be, and we're going to warn people ahead of time. I'm like, so your perceived thought crimes of who I am make me a horrible person. Very, very interesting, and something interesting to go through. But what I recognized in that is people would take anything. They would dissect anything of me in video, and they would point out and they would build a case against me that wasn't real. It was real in their minds, and they were so passionate about it, they could convince other people that that was the case. For instance, in my health journey, if you guys, I know some of you from Stimulus kind of remember I looked different. In a 2-year period, I went from 100 pounds to almost 300, and nobody could figure out why. And guys, I was a very active, I was a very health conscious person. Watched everything I put in my mouth. Nothing made sense about it, right? And it was absolutely devastating. People were convinced I am one of these YouTubers that just overeats myself into oblivion and then says I wants to lose weight, and I don't. No, I was constantly trying to figure out what was wrong, and I couldn't get anybody to help me. Luckily, from practitioners, we figured out more about what's going on with my gut, and as you can see, I'm way more back to my normal self, which is wonderful. But my point is, I do really like what she talks about with anti-fandoms, and that's something to be really careful of when you watch videos that are commentary videos or videos where they're being very critical of people. Even my videos, and that's part of why in my videos, I try to keep things a lot lighter, because at the end of the day, you really don't know what's going on unless you know somebody. But the problem is with something like YouTube and the media, if enough people hear something enough, the facts don't matter. Popular opinion weighs out. I've been through this, and it's a nightmare to go through. So she's absolutely right. And something else I want to point out that she talked about that I haven't even said much about. There is a power imbalance between Amber and Johnny. Now, we can argue it all day, every day, but the fact that he was, in his 40s, and she was only 23 when they met, I've said this on several times and several occasions. You are not a fully functioning person until your mid to late 20s, because those processing centers of your brain that weigh consequence to your actions aren't fully formed. Also your emotional processing sensors, which is why in your teens and early 20s, things can feel and be so chaotic in you because those things haven't fully formed yet. So as a result, until that happens, there is a power dynamic. I was with somebody when I was 20 who was 28, 29, and there was a big power imbalance and power dynamic with that person that ended up having A-word behaviors, very controlling behaviors with that. So I do think that's something that nobody takes into account. And I think part of it is a lot of people, A, don't know that science, and B, their mentality is, yeah, but it's legal. The person isn't a teenager. It's legal. Right. Well, in some states, if your parents sign off for it, it's legal for them to marry their daughters off at 10 years old. So should we go by that argument? And I understand that's a child, that's different. But I am saying it's about who has the power. And if you have a person who's not fully formed versus not only a person who is, but somebody like Johnny with all those connections, all of that power, guys, with somebody who has all of that money, that is something to take into consideration. Just throwing it out there.
A recent article in The Atlantic pointed out this pattern in fandoms where fan communities would become obsessed with theories that the male objects of their fandom were the victims of less famous female romantic interests. Benedict Cumberbatch fans thought his wife was part of an international crime ring and that she had faked all her pregnancies. One Direction fans said that Louis was gay and the entertainment industry had forcibly closeted him, and that his ex-girlfriend and the mother of his child was central to the conspiracy. And these fandoms would hyperfixate on every detail, proving their claims by examining hundreds of photos and videos, thinking that celebrities were offering tiny secret little Easter eggs and hints in every press interview, every photo, every wave of the hand. And these fans subject these women to body shaming, slut shaming, and absolutely unhinged criminal accusations.
Now, let's go into this one a little bit because this is interesting. I do think that's a very interesting point. And also we've seen that with celebrities, right? Or different people. For instance, people who have, who is that guy? That Justin Bieber. I was thinking Justice Bieber. I've watched too much Office. Justin Bieber, right? So he was with that Selena Gomez, cute little girl, right? And then when they were younger, and now he got married to Hailey Bieber, just, you know, and both women, absolutely gorgeous women, right? They all seem very sweet. Obviously, I don't know any of these people, just, you know, I have nothing negative to say. But because people were so used to Justin being with this girl, Selena, and now that he's not with her, they are constantly attacking the girl that he ended up getting married to in a very, very mean way. And they also attacked Selena when she was with him because they wanted to be with her. Now, here's the interesting part. She is absolutely correct in what she's saying, but there is a flip side. So for instance, sometimes fandoms pick up on things because there is something wrong. So for instance, look at what happened with Britney Spears. I was one of the people that was called crazy a couple years ago. My first viral video on TikTok, I think I got 1.6 million views, was pointing out the A-word behavior she was going through and that she was a prisoner. And people said I was nuts, that I am just seeing things that aren't there. But that's the thing. When I'm able to analyze these situations like I did with former YouTubers or her, I have a track record of being proven right with what I'm saying because I can spot these behaviors. However, there are some people who will just come up with stories and come up with things to fit whatever a narrative or agendas that they have. I don't come into these things with a narrative or agenda. I come in genuinely wanting to help or to educate. But some people, well, if you're wanting to be with a certain celebrity and you can't, let's do everything we can to make up stories so we can get that person isolated. Because even though the chances of whoever the person is who's doing these behaviors, right, actually being with the object of their affection, that's some sort of celebrity or celebrated person, is slim to none, it's all about keeping a fantasy going. They need to keep a fantasy going or a narrative going, even if they're in the wrong or even if they're hurting people. And in that situation, it's a bit different. But I just wanted to point out the two dichotomies and aspects, because there are times where fandoms can pick up on that something is wrong and it is wrong. And then there are times where it's just absolute insanity and you have to kind of see what's going on where. Just throwing it out there. And for even Britney Spears, Britney said it was her fans that helped her understand the type of A-word behavior she was under. It's like she knew, but she didn't really understand it, which a lot of us go through. It's like, well, I had an A-word relationship and that guy was bad, but you don't really fully understand it. And that's why it can take years to really uncover it all and dive into it. As well as, like I said, your brain is going to protect you from a lot of that stuff and it will come up in chunks when and as your body and brain think it's time for that to happen. We really don't see this or emphasize it enough. Our brains, our bodies, our organs, guys, they have their own little lives. We are billions and trillions of teeny tiny cells that make up these bodies. Each one of those cells have their own little lives. Think about how incredible and intelligent each one is, working for your best and highest benefit. I'm always thanking my body every day for keeping me alive because of that. I try to talk to my body and build a relationship with it. Same thing with my mind. And just my point is saying that our bodies and brains are trying to protect us. And I think that's beautiful.
Women are seen as glamorous, seductive, malicious, conniving, but also stupid and disgusting. And all the while, these people claim to be feminists, saying that it's the woman who's setting women's rights back and making everyone look bad. My friends, this is the patriarchy at work. Society is quicker to say a woman is a liar and a man is the victim than they are to believe women as a general rule. And while saying she's the liar who's hurting women and victims everywhere, they also lob every weapon the patriarchy has ever used to keep women down at her. Heard's being called a whore, a gold digger, a crazy bitch, manipulative, a monster, a Karen, bipolar. And don't even get me started about the history of using mental illness to control women. Memes claiming to show her doing cocaine while testifying on the stand. TikTok saying...
Now I want to say this. I can understand, like, some of the stuff that people come up with about Heard is ridiculous. And I've even done videos where I've debunked some of what people have said. So for instance, there was a video going around that, people had been saying that Amber Heard gave Eve Bartlow a black eye. And it was a doctored photo, right? So both sides of fandom do stupid things. And that was something I wanted to point out. And people get mad at me too, even when I pointed out the fact that Johnny has done things to Amber, like the unsealed documents. Certain things came forward that didn't paint Johnny in the best light. And it's not because I'm anti-Johnny. I'm pro the truth. I'm pro healing. I'm pro forgiveness. And I just want to talk about the things that I'm seeing on both sides, right? But I do also think there is this thing where women as victims have to be perfect. And you cannot expect anybody to be under that much A-word psychologically, physically, mentally to react in any way that's healthy. I'm not saying that people shouldn't be held accountable. So if you're under A-word, you do reactive A-word and you hurt people, everybody should be held accountable for their actions. But what I am saying is when you are under all of that, how on earth can you expect anybody to act perfectly? And if they don't act perfectly, we do tend to insult women like that. But we do that in general. We hold women to a much higher standard in society. Think about it. We look at women as we perceive as unfit mothers way worse than we do deadbeat fathers, because we just expect that a lot of men, at least half men, are going to be that way. And to the men who aren't, I'm not speaking to you. To the good men, welcome and thank you for being on the channel. What I'd like to say is we all can admit in our different genres and niches, we have turds in every punch bowl, right? That's what I'm trying to get out. I'm referring to the turds, not the good guys. But she's absolutely right in what she's saying.
Depp should have killed her. And if this is what's being posted publicly on social media, I cannot imagine the level of hatred and death threats she's receiving personally.
Which she never should. She never should. Now, one thing she talked about, she just talked about her being on the stand and the whole thing about her, taking a pharmaceutical, maybe she shouldn't, and people saying that. Here's what I want to point out. Heard's behavior on the stand was so disgusting and so manipulative that I kind of look at that one as bringing her on herself. The fake crying, the very overdramatics, and the fact that she was caught lying. She would be smug. She didn't want to admit anything that she had done wrong in a really nasty, snotty way. So even though I understand what she's saying about all those rumors, I can also empathize with the people who saw all that and thought, is she doing X, Y, and Z because of her behaviors? Now, could we argue that her behaviors are because she went through PTSD and trauma and abuse? Maybe. But at the same time, we know psychologists, we know the people that Heard directly worked with in court said she didn't have PTSD. In fact, her symptoms were so exaggerated and they found that she had been given a checklist and she had every single 1 times 10, which would showcase in the way that she did it that she was lying. Now, that's the hard thing, though. I'm not going to sit here, and she also talked about we throw up mental health issues. Well, I do think that has to be taken into account when you're dealing with somebody's credibility of the content of their character. If she has mental health issues that consistently make her lie, then that is an indication we might not always believe her. And that doesn't mean that society in itself is horrible. We're just looking at some of the facts. However, she is correct in that women are held to this much higher standard, especially when you're a woman that's a victim. How on earth can anybody expect you to act perfectly. The whole reason you are stuck in that situation is because of the A-word behavior, and you can't cognitively, mentally, emotionally find a safe way out of that situation. Just want to throw that out there.
This is why people don't report abuse. Intentionally false accusations of relationship violence are exceedingly rare. Because why in the hell would you open up this level of scrutiny against yourself, your life, your choices, and how you responded to or didn't respond to the abuse as it was happening? Because if you're not a perfect victim, especially if you're a woman, because let's be honest, if the gender roles were reversed in this case, Heard may be canceled, but the level of hatred would not be this intense. And the male version of Heard in this hypothetical scenario would probably go on to win an Oscar next year.
She asked a really interesting question. I'm going to agree with this except for the fact that we're dealing with Amber Heard. And that is, she said, why would you open up this level of scrutiny and this and that and this and that? And this is why a lot of victims don't speak up. 100% correct. Well, on top of that, many times for most victims, it's not safe to speak up. It's not a safe thing. Remember, these are people many times that say, if you leave, I will hurt the people around you. Right? I will do so there. And if there's children involved, there are all these different levels of safety when it comes to this, what we don't talk about. But in Heard's case, guys, she was saying, why would anybody open themselves up? Heard's career, movie-wise, wasn't really going that great. And what, she had Aquaman, but she only got that from Johnny. So when it comes to Heard, and because we had the cultural conversation come up about A-word behavior, Heard seems like she, and from everything we saw, it seemed like she was planning and plotting all of this so she could look like she's some kind of women's rights empowerment type of person. And in that way, she could continue some sort of career and get paid, or have that accolade, you know, working with the UN and all of that. So in Heard's case, she actually stood to profit from all of this, and she did. I wanted to point that out. And with that being said, I am saying I agree with what this woman is saying for most people. Heard, I think, is a little bit different of a story. And I think in her assessment of this, like I said, very intelligent. I like it. I think a lot of what's missing is the fact, from my perspective, it is Heard. And many of us sat and studied and analyzed these behaviors and analyzed the lies and analyzed what she did for weeks and weeks and weeks. It's not like we just came up. Because think about it. When she wrote the op-ed, were people, did they have this much level of hatred and meanness towards her? Absolutely not. This did not come until we saw her behaviors on the stand on repeat. Just wanted to throw that out there.
So if you're not the perfect victim because you did something wrong, you fought back, you're an imperfect person, then the world will lob every available insult at you to get you to shut up. Because as a social group, humans are fucking idiots. Incapable of detecting nuance or understanding that there's a lot that can't be known or found out by doing independent true crime internet sleuthing and thinking you're fucking Sherlock Holmes. And here's what this means for victims of abuse. Fewer victims will come forward, especially if they haven't been perfect during the course of their relationship with the abuser. Abusers will feel emboldened to launch defamation lawsuits against the victim because high-profile cases and the related media frenzy paint the picture that false accusations are common and have to be rooted out at all costs.
And this is where I think there is a dichotomy. I like every point. I agree with it, except for one thing. And this is where I think Me Too has really messed up. But then again, I don't think Me Too, I think most of these movements we ever hear about, they weren't made for good purposes. They are made to look like they're made for a good purpose, right? Anything that the government's funding or that the psychopaths at the top have a hand in paying for, guys, I don't trust it. I don't trust it whatsoever. But with that being said, she's absolutely right. This does make it harder for the average normal women in these situations to come forward, which is part of why we are all so angry. But the other part to this is Amber lied on repeat, made up evidence, created evidence that doesn't exist. See, it's one thing to not be perfect, guys, right? To fight back, to do reactive A-word. I get it. I agree with her. Amber planned and plotted and went very far out of her way in this situation and scenario. And this is where Me Too has screwed up. I think that Me Too, it almost feels like it was designed to make things worse for women. And I'll explain why. And maybe that wasn't the intention of the original people that have created it. But again, we're dealing with the media, and the media takes things for their own narrative. And think about it. The media wants to talk about minority issues. Has the media done anything to make minority issues better? No, they've made it worse. They just made us all fight each other instead of fighting the psychopaths at the top. That's all this has done. Now, with Me Too, and this is where I see that the issue is. With Me Too, it's if there's an accusation, regardless of there's evidence, let's go ahead and ruin lives. Let's go ahead and ruin the life of somebody because somebody made an accusation. The problem is, in doing that, it leaves no room for healing. It leaves no room for forgiveness. Now, it's one thing if you're an Epstein or a Maxwell or a Weinstein. That's a different animal. But in certain situations and certain circumstances, and really in all of them, but I'm saying we need to be open to forgiveness. And because there is no forgiveness, and then you have no evidence, it looks like you can just do and say whatever you want and ruin somebody's life. And that's the backlash. And then here's the kicker. When you're under a word, many times you're not going to have evidence. The evidence is destroyed. You're not allowed to have it. You're not in a position where you can get evidence. The person that you're with gaslights you to believe that you are supposed to protect them. So you end up getting rid of the evidence. There are so many reasons why there aren't evidence. So the whole thing of Me Too is believe all women, because we don't have systems put in place to be able to legally or criminally really go after this in any way other than civil, which who most of the time has the money for that? And the person doing the A word probably doesn't have any money for you to recoup anyway. But because it's so hard to even be able to collect evidence and then what do you do with it? That's why the narrative was believe all women. The problem was when you get somebody who is like Amber Heard, because most of us aren't just going after women who have these accusations. This is one of the first where there was a big backlash. And this is what I've been warning on repeat. I've said if there is no room for forgiveness in cancel culture, there is no incentive to change. And then the victims just become the bullies. And does that fix anything? No. Are we better off as a society? No. That's why I scream forgiveness and healing.
Any abuser with the means to do so can use the threat of a defamation lawsuit to further control their victims. And they can go through with the defamation lawsuit, which then makes their relationship drag on for years, even after they separate, and can ruin the victim's reputation and cost the victim tens of thousands of dollars in attorney's fees.
Hundreds.
Even for abusers who don't have the means to bring a defamation case, many people are just terrified of the thought of any legal action and may not understand that the person making the threat doesn't actually have the means to make good on that threat. Especially if the victim is an immigrant or someone who has a heightened fear of getting involved in the U.S. legal system. Abusers can also capitalize on the fact that relationship abuse is murky. Victims are imperfect, and no one besides the couple themselves can truly know what happened behind closed doors or the nature of the relationship and the power dynamics that played a part in the abuse. Proving emotional abuse and coercion in court can be extremely difficult. There's rarely a smoking gun, and the abuse can be subtle, pervasive, and long-term in a way that can't be communicated in court. So the victim can come forward about being abused, and the abuser can sue them for defamation, and if the victim can't come forward with some smoking gun evidence, photos of physical injuries, medical reports, etc., they could be subject to huge damages that they then have to pay their own abuser. And abusers can also capitalize on the fact that society fucking hates women and revels in any opportunity to tear them down using every weapon in the patriarchy playbook.
Now, see, it's hard because I don't think that society as a whole wants to hate women. I think we've been gaslit and brainwashed to let us suffer. So for instance, and this is to all my male counterparts, hey boys, hey, do you understand that women 25 to 50% of their lives are chronically ill and we're told shut up and deal with it and there's nothing you can do about it? Yeah, it's called menstruation. And did you also know that there are areas of the world where people don't experience menstrual pain? They don't even experience much pain during childbirth. These are in different Aboriginal or Native American cultures in Africa and South America, in different places. This has been documented. Now, why is that? Because they live off the land in a way that makes their hormones so strong and so healthy, they don't go through what we go through. Now, there are other elements where they are lacking modern medicine, and I'm not saying that we shouldn't have modern medicine. We absolutely should. But what I am saying is this. We are in a society that is constantly, if nothing else, guys, our bodies are constantly physically under attack. From the time we are born, we are being fed fake synthetic hormones that are screwing us up. That's everybody, but especially women. Now, it's very common for 8, 9, and 10-year-olds to suddenly be menstruating. When I was younger, you were told it can happen when you're 10 or 11, but it's kind of rare. It's more going to be 12 through maybe 17. And why is that? Because our hormones are constantly, our endocrine systems are constantly under attack. On top of that, the birth controls that we are given make us physically sick. The fact that I went for years with heart issues and nobody said a word that the birth control that you're on can cause heart issues, can cause arrhythmias, can cause all types of things to happen, whether or not it's hormonal or whether or not it's something you insert. Don't get me started on birth controls you insert, which desecrated my health, and I lost over a decade of my life in a fallopian tube trying to fix. So my point is to say, I don't think it's that most normal people sit around going, I hate women. I don't think that's it. I think it's we've been gaslit, both men and women, to believe that we are second-class citizens. And literally, guys, women's health care is almost nothing. For instance, how often when you're pregnant or before you get pregnant are your hormones checked? So we're supposed to go to the dentist twice a year and get our teeth cleaned, but we're not at least twice a year getting our hormones checked? How many times do you get your hormones checked after you give birth, before you give birth, post after, the year or 2 or 3? Doesn't happen. Do you guys know that the weight loss industry, and this one drives me nuts. Like, I love Bill Burr. He's one of my favorite comedians, and he craps all over women, and some of it is very funny, right? And I actually agree with some of the points. But he'll talk about women and weight loss, and I laugh because from a perspective of a man who doesn't understand the science of women's bodies and weight loss, everything he's saying makes sense. But did you know that weight loss is only about, literally, what we know of weight loss comes from studies of men who need to lose weight quickly before a surgery. Does not take anything into account of women and their hormones. I can't tell you how many women that, I've said this on repeat, but I'm going to say it again, that I grew up with that had eating issues simply because they did everything perfect with their diet and they either couldn't lose weight and were still gaining weight. We are literally, health is under attack as women. Now, it's all of us in society, men included, also children. But as women, it's aimed at us even more so because of the hormones, because of the birth control, because of the abysmal medical system we have. So in that, it's almost like as women, we are supposed to just deal with it. And most of us as women don't even know. So what happens is when we try so hard to lose weight or look a certain way, and then we can't, and we can't fit either the ideal that we want or what society, even back in the day, said, then we just absolutely end up hating ourselves and we think, well, we must just be awful fat pieces of crap. And then we just eat whatever as a result because nothing else works. And so it becomes a self-fulfilling prophecy. And no matter what you do, every medical professional just says eat less. Guys, and I was almost 300 pounds and I was eating 500 calories a day and watching everything I put in my mouth. I would have doctors look at me and say, exercise and eat less. When I exercise, I gain weight, which now I understand why. And what, do I need to go down to 300 calories or 250? They just chose that I was lying, or they chose not to believe me. It was only if you lived with me and watched what I was doing that you could understand, holy crap, I'm not lying. Do you know how many women this happens to? It's just that most women don't recognize it because of how brainwashed we have been that we are pieces of crap. And as a result, men don't take us that seriously sometimes with some of this. And I can't even fault men because I don't even think they know to, because we don't even understand how much A word we're under in society. So guys, there is some left of this video, but I know my video has been super, super long. Also, I encourage you, if you watch this, go give her a watch and watch this without my commentary. And if you guys stuck with me to this long, I so, so appreciate it. I know this was not even a bit, I was gonna say a bit of a longer video. That is such an understatement. But I had seen this video the other day and I hadn't done response videos like this in a while and I just felt really compelled. Again, there is no attack and there's no disrespect. I agree with most of what she said. The only elements that I don't agree with is the fact that we have to remember we're dealing with amberturd. And I'm not trying to say that to be mean, but it is what it is. And in dealing with her and watching her behaviors, I don't think we can look at it the same as we do other women, not because she's not a woman, obviously, but because of how awful it was. This wasn't about being an imperfect person. Johnny was very much imperfect. It's about she went out of her way to lie, to make up evidence, to put on what looked like these crazy performances, to you know, be doing the fake crying, all the things that we saw. But I do think that this woman, this lawyer, brings up many, many good points, and I'm so glad she put out that video, and I wish her nothing but continued success and continued healing in her journey, and What do you guys think? I know this was so long, but I'm very, very curious. Did you guys like this? I can always do more videos like this. They don't have to be 50 minutes long, but I can do more videos like this. If you guys like stuff like this and these breakdowns, let me know. I used to do all kinds of videos like this, or I did that with Stimulus too, where I'd talk about the political leaders. It's been a minute, but these are always really fun for me, and I like to be able to give my insights. I like to be able to continue these conversations, because again, my whole goal, guys, I have a few goals on this channel. One, when you come here, I want you to feel loved and appreciated and respected. I want you to feel so loved. That's the biggest thing that I want you to take away, is that you are loved and appreciated and respected just because you exist. The other thing is I want to have fun. I want to be able to talk about these heavy things, but in a way where we can lighten the load and bring light to it, and then healing and forgiveness. Guys, about a year ago, I might get a little emotional saying this, but about a year ago I had to face my mortality again. I had to do a surgery to remove my fallopian tube, which birth control, thank you, is most likely the culprit of. Thank you, birth control, and now we're dealing with PCOS. Another thing, why is it so common for women to have PCOS? So many things about the medical system that I have questions, and anyway, at that time I was still very sick. I was working on stuff, dealing with all kinds of issues with infections, and the thing is with my conditions, with POTS and dysautonomia, going under is not safe. That can be life-ending. And I also know, because that almost happened once 10 years ago. Now, it was before I got diagnosed, right? And you know what I did that I think really made it so that I turned around and survived? I had a couple months before the surgery that I could prepare. And that's when I started my big meditation movement. It's probably in May, right? And you know what I did? I realized on some level, I attracted this in my reproductive system because of all the A-word behavior I went through. And guys, I was a mess. I was anxious. I was terrified. I was so socially scared of people. That's something I'm still working on. You wouldn't know it ever talking to me, because I'm me, and I'm, you know, this big fun personality, and I'm loving, and I'm boisterous and outgoing. But a lot of that can be coping mechanism, because let me give you a show and a performance and make you feel good so you don't hurt me. And that's something I've had to work on. But anyways, what changed the tide for me was I wrote down a list of the people who did A-word behavior to me. I wrote it down. And in my meditations, I do a 2-hour meditation every morning. And part of that, I do 30 minutes of working on forgiveness. And I would just talk to those people in my mind and say, I forgive you. And I'd break down, I'd cry, and I really focused on that. And I gotta tell you, I feel like getting to that point of really forgiving, even forgiving the people that weren't upset. It's not about them, guys. It's about me. It's about letting go of that pain and making the decision to go towards love for myself and for other people. And I swear that is what helped turn my body around and turn my life around. And guys, when I went into that surgery, I remember I was laughing and joking with the doctors and the nurses, and I wasn't even scared, because I'd gotten the point. I made peace. If this is the end for me, I'm going out giggling. I'm going out in Katie style, right? And when I woke up, I was so grateful. I kept saying thank you to every single person I saw, because I didn't know that I was going to wake up. I didn't know. And I got through it just fine. And the whole point, guys, is I think what really helped turn around my health was to just forgive everybody and go towards love. To go towards love. And I'm not saying that if people have A-worded you, I'm not saying let them back in. Forgiveness doesn't mean let them back in. And guys, also, forgiveness is a journey. There are people in my life right now that have hurt me and devastated my life, and I am actively working on forgiving, but I get angry. These are people who don't even act sorry. I know they are. They have their own issues. And it doesn't matter if they apologize. It doesn't matter if that person or those people, you know, care or show care in what they did. It's not about that. It's about, you don't deserve to hold on to the pain of what somebody's done to protect yourself. And I get it. We're trying to protect ourselves. That's why I held on to it, to protect me. But I ended up hurting me. It's like people say, you're drinking poison thinking you're hurting the other person. And for me, I wasn't trying to hurt those people. I was trying to protect myself. But the best way you protect yourself is to forgive the people who've hurt you. Forgive yourself for anything that you might have done that allowed it into your life. Even if you weren't aware, forgive yourself. Forgive those people, and know that no matter what happens, nobody can truly hurt you. Because whatever you want to call the universe, God, source, love, creator, all that is, you know, Krishna, Buddha, I forgot all the names, but I mean, there's probably, what, hundreds? Depending on the cultures and the religions and things, but whatever that higher power is that you go to, whatever that is for you, has your back and is always working in your best and highest good, even if we can't see it. Because had I not gone through all these A-word behaviors, guys, I wouldn't be able to spot it to bring it to light in these videos. My first round of YouTube, I helped educate hundreds of thousands of young women about A-word behaviors and how to spot it. I'm very, very proud of myself for that. And so I look now and I'm like, thank God I went through it. Because whatever you want to call God said, you're strong enough to go through it and deliver these messages to help people overcome it and build a better society. I know I'm a small channel, and I'm not sitting here saying I'm going to change the world with what I'm doing, but as many hearts as I can encourage and inspire to forgive and to heal and to go towards love only makes us all better. And my goal is just to help you see that you deserve love from yourself and from those around you. And that's all I want to encourage. Okay, guys, I think I'm going to end the video here. Take care. Lots of love, lots of blessings. Till the next one, I'm giving everybody hugs. Mwah! This is Stay Safe, and as always, your girl. We'll see you soon. Bye, guys.